A lot of people in their 50s start asking the same question. What if I could retire 10 years earlier? What if I didn't have to wait until 65? What if I walked away at 55? It's a tempting thought. At 55, you're still young enough to travel without worrying about health limitations, to play with your grandkids while they're little, or to finally enjoy hobbies that you've put off for years. Retiring at that age, it feels like unlocking an entirely different chapter of your life. One where you're not just free from work, but you're free to actually live. But here's what most people don't realize. That decision doesn't just shift your calendar, it dramatically shifts your finances. Retiring at 55 means your money has to stretch across 35 or even 40 years instead of 25 or 30 years. It means leaving behind 10 years of paychecks, 10 years of savings contributions, and 10 years of compounding growth on top of all that. And it is not just about income. It is about expenses. At 55, you're not yet eligible for Social Security, so every dollar must come from your own accounts. You're also too young for Medicare. When you add it all up, the gap between retiring at 55 and retiring at 65, it's not just big, it is shocking. For many families, we're talking about the difference between being financially comfortable and constantly worrying about whether your money is going to last. And that's what we're going to walk through today. The true cost of retiring at 55 versus waiting until 65. And the hidden costs most people overlook when they picture early retirement. Hi, I'm Mark Wisniewski, president of Southern Incomes. For over 20 years, I've been helping pre-retirees and retirees protect their savings, create reliable income, and navigate those hidden risks too many people overlook. And if you're in your 50s and want to find out whether retiring at 55 is realistic for your situation, click the link in the description below to book a free consultation, and I'll walk you through your options. Today, we're going to break down the shocking cost differences between retiring at 55 versus 65. If you find this helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. 1. The longevity factor. The first factor is longevity, a simple question of how long your retirement is going to last. If you retire at 65 and live to 90, you're going to need 25 years of income. Retire at 55, and now you'll need 35 years of income. That's an extra decade, and the math is big. Let's say your retirement lifestyle costs $100,000 a year. That extra 10 years adds $1 million to your lifetime expenses. That's not just a small adjustment, it's $1 million swing. Even if you live just to 85, retiring at 55 means planning for 30 years instead of 20. Either way, the earlier you stop working, the longer your money has to last, and the harder your portfolio is going to have to work. This is why many early retirees underestimate their needs. They picture retirement as a 20-year window, but in reality, it may last 30 or even 40 years. 2. The healthcare gap. The second major factor is healthcare. In the U.S., Medicare begins at 65. Retire at 55, and you have a 10-year gap. So let's say your private insurance costs will be nice and say $8,000 a year for one person, or closer to $16,000 for a couple. Over that 10 years, that's $160,000 out of pocket. And that's just premiums. Add in deductibles, your prescriptions, and out-of-pocket costs. You could easily be looking at $200,000 to $250,000 before Medicare even kicks in. Now, contrast that with retiring at 65. Yes, Medicare still has costs, but far more affordable than paying 10 years for private insurance. This is one of the biggest hidden costs of leaving the workforce early. And for many people, it is a big surprise. 3, Social Security timing. Next, let's look at Social Security. At 55, you're too young to claim benefits, so you're going to need to cover anywhere from 7 to 12 years entirely from your own savings before Social Security becomes available to you. So let's say your full retirement age benefit at 67 happens to be exactly $3,000 a month. If you start at 62, you might only receive around $2,100, and that's a permanent 30% cut for life. Now, if you delay to 70, you could probably get closer to $3,700 a month. The difference is huge, but here's the challenge. The earlier you retire, the longer you'll need to rely on your own portfolio before those checks start rolling in. Retiring at 65 shortens that gap dramatically. Not only do you need to cover just 2 to 5 years before Social Security becomes an option, then you choose whether to start early or delay for larger benefits. 4, the income gap, earnings lost. The next cost is one many people overlook, the earnings that you're giving up. Let's say you're making $150,000 a year late in your career. Retiring at 55 means saying goodbye to $1.5 million in gross income between ages 55 and 65. But it's not just that paycheck. Think about the retirement contributions you're missing. If you're putting $30,000 a year into your 401k with an employer match, and if it grows at just 6%, that could add up to nearly $400,000 added to your retirement accounts over the course of that decade. That's the double hit of retiring earlier. You lose 10 years of contributions going in, and you add 10 years of withdrawals coming out. 5, sequence of return risks. Another factor is what's called sequence of return risks. What does that mean? Well, if you retire at 55 and the market experiences a downturn in those early years, it can permanently reduce how long your portfolio lasts. That's because you're withdrawing during a downturn, which locks in losses and gives your money less time to recover. If you retire at 65 instead, not only do you give your investments an extra 10 years to grow, but you shorten that period of time they'll need to support you. That makes your portfolio much more resistant to those market ups and downs. This is why many retirees use a strategy where they set aside several years of living expenses in safer, more liquid accounts, so they don't have to sell investments during a downturn. Without a plan like this, early retirees often get caught in a very, very dangerous cycle. 6, lifestyle cost of 10 extra years. And finally, let's talk about lifestyle. If you want to travel, upgrade your home, spend on your hobbies, or simply live comfortably, retiring at 55 means stretching your savings for 10 more years than if you retire at 65. A couple spending $100,000 a year in retirement is going to need $3.5 million to cover 35 years. If they wait until 65, they may only need $2.5 million to cover 25 years. That's the shocking cost difference, potentially $1 million or even more. And keep in mind, those numbers don't even include inflation. At just 3%, perfectly normal, $100,000 today will cost about $135,000 just 10 years from now. And oh, by the way, over $240,000 30 years from now. So the longer your retirement, the more inflation erodes your spending power. Let's take two people with the exact same savings. Say each have $1.5 million and they're age 55. If they retire immediately at 55 and spend $100,000 a year, their money might only last until their early 80s, depending on market returns, of course. Now, if they keep working until 65, they may grow that $1.5 million to closer to $2.5 million with continued savings and compounding. Now, instead of funding 35 years, they only need to fund 25 years. Oh, by the way, with more assets to do it. That is the true cost difference, retiring at 55 versus 65. It isn't just 10 more years of retirement. It is the difference between running out of money in your lifetime and being comfortably funded all the way until the end. So here's the takeaway. Retiring at 55 can be done, absolutely, but it is expensive. You're covering more years, paying more for health care, losing out on 10 years of income and savings. So you're putting more pressure on your investments. Retiring at 65, on the other hand, that's going to give your savings more time to grow, shortens your retirement period, and reduces all those financial gaps that we talked about. The right age depends on your savings, your lifestyle, and your goals, but whichever age you choose, the key is having a plan that accounts for healthcare, Social Security, inflation, and your overall investment risk. If you're approaching retirement and want to make sure your retirement plan is working for you, not against you, let's talk. Click the link in the description below and book a free consultation, and I'll walk you through all your options.